Okay, class, we now are talking on shock. Now, this particular subject here is at the end of my cardiovascular module. Now, let's think about that. The cardiovascular module contained the blood, the heart, and the blood vessels. So shock involves a look at all three. Critical thinking. These are the kind of things I like. Shock looks at, and we'll also do one on hypertension too, which is the kind of the other flip side of shock. Shock is the pressure is too low. Hypertension, what? Is too high. All right. So right here, this is my shock PowerPoint. My shock PowerPoint in my E&P2. All right. Let's start. Shock is basically the collapse and progressive failure of the cardiovascular system, leading to an inadequate perfusion of the tissues. Now, when you think of shock, most people think about, I don't have enough blood supply to the brain. Now, that generally will happen, but technically it's an inadequate perfusion of tissues. So you could have just one organ having shock if the blood supply, so we could say shock kidney, shock lung, type of thing when you get into clinical. Shock can be caused by some outside extrinsic traumatic insult like getting cut and bleeding out. Or it could be something within the body itself like a heart failure. Intrinsic. Okay. We've discussed this thoroughly, so I'll pass on from that. We've discussed this thoroughly. So I'll pass on from that. We'll do it again in a way. So now we come into the stages of shock I want you to know about. All right. Reversible stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Non-reversible, stage 3. Okay. Stage 1, which is reversible, is compensated shock. We're going to talk about that in a little while. Kind of see what your thoughts are. So compensated shock. Compensated shock says that something insulted your body. Insult means anything that would deviate you from homeostatic range. Let me say it again. I brought the subject up. An insult in clinical, we're going to say, is anything that would deviate you from homeostatic range. So the body has been insulted, whether extrinsically, we said, or intrinsically. Okay? And the blood pressure is dropping. Okay? So, but the body using other organs, not the ones that did the job, not the culprit, the cause of the shock. It uses other organs that's going to compensate to bring it back. So the body's going to do it itself. Now, roughly if you lose about 15% of your real or perceived blood loss. Now, 15% real means you bleed out. Perceived means that, let's say the pipes get bigger in your body. Let's say you have a whole lot of vasodilation. So even though you didn't lose blood, it would appear you did because the pipe got bigger, real or perceived. Now, some may be able to go higher. Some people, let's say if they are real good athletes or real good shape, they might be able to do 25%. You know, you'll hear somebody say, wow, it was a miracle. He lost almost a third of his blood volume and he's still living. So sometimes, you're lucky. Okay. Stage 2, still reversible. Stage 2 is uncompensated, which basically means that these efforts, so let's say that the heart got weak and the blood vessels started to try to help out. Oh, no, let's do this one. Let's say that you got cut and started bleeding out. So you losing volume. The heart comes in and tries to pump real hard and fast to compensate. Heart tries to come in. But you keep losing blood till finally the blood going to the heart. Remember, coronary circulation starts to diminish. Now the heart can't keep pumping hard. So it starts getting weak. When it gets weak, the blood pressure goes down. The more the blood pressure goes down, the less blood to the heart. And vice versa. So it's a positive feedback spiral down. is a positive feedback spiraling down to destruction, uncompensated. But where's the reversible? If we can bring it back in sufficient time, you haven't lost any organs. They'll come back too. So, but what you're going to need here is medical intervention. See, here you didn't because the body's doing it. But here you're going to need medical intervention. That's stage 2, but it's still reversible. Stage 3, non-reversible. You've lost so much, and it's been so long, that now the drop in blood pressure has knocked off some organs that just aren't going to come back. The easiest organ to knock off, if you don't give it enough blood supply, is the kidney. Now, it doesn't say you're dead now. Understand what I'm saying? It doesn't say you're dead. It just says if and when you get the blood pressure back up, the kidneys ain't going to work no more. They're not going to work no more. So that means dialysis and everything. So that's stage 3. So stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Okay, let's go a little further. Okay. So the severity shock can be graded on 1 to 4. I'm not going to get into that. You can glance at it. This is real clinical here. So we'll move on. Symptoms of shock. If the brain's, with shock, you'll be tired, lethargic, weak, dizzy. That's symptoms of shock. Remember, now symptoms mean you have to tell me that. See, symptoms are different than signs. Here's signs of shock. Skin changes, thirst, things of that nature. Hyperventilation. These are soft signs. Here's some measurable signs. Blood pressure drop, pulse rate goes up, things of this nature here. You can glance at it. Don't get real heavy on this though. Okay. So now we're to the types of shock. Hypovolemic shock, loss of fluid volume, cardiogenic, vasogenic, and so forth, and obstructive. Okay. So we're going to kind of talk about this. Okay, hypovolemic shock. What are some of the causes? Well, bleeding out, burns, losing fluid, diarrhea, vomiting. Okay. Hypovolemic shock refers to a method in which rapid fluid loss occurs. Okay. Here's hypovolemic. And some more talking about hypovolemic. Okay. Cardiovascular system compensation. All right, we're going to switch from here now and come over here. All right. As we said, in stage 1, compensated shock, there's a culprit. That's the cause of the shock, and a compensator. That's activities that try to help out. All of shock can be explained within this formula here that we talked about. And we're going to play with that formula. Okay? So this. What senses your decrease in blood pressure? This is review. Your baroreceptors, the aortic and carotid sinuses. The aortic and carotid sinuses. We've talked about that before in the control of blood pressure. So go back and review that. What systems do we have to help out? We have the nervous system, because we have the cardiovascular center composed of the cardiac center and vasomotor center. Then we have the endocrine, the renin-angiotensin system, aldosterone, ADH, antidiuretic hormone, epinephrine. So that's what we have to help out. Okay? So I want you to have all that in your mind when we explore this. All right. In hypovolemic shock, so now we're going to kind of play with this here. In hypovolemic shock, in the MAP formula, okay, in the MAP formula, remember the MAP formula is this. Here's the MAP formula here. In the MAP formula, what goes down? Obviously, something has to go down. Now, let's just put it here. MAP equals to CO times SVR. That's the MAP formula again. So if we're dealing with hypovolemic shock, what goes down? Something must go down to drop this. Okay, what would go down? EDV, end diastolic volume, is concerned with the blood volume. So if MAP, so what will go down, do this, I put the wrong thing. What will go down would be EDV. So we're going to highlight EDV, end diastolic volume. Let's do that. Put that in red. Okay. So in hypovolemic shock, EDV goes down. If EDV goes down, then what will happen is stroke volume will go down. Okay. So that goes down, which would cause this to go down, which would then cause cardiac output to go down. Okay. So that's how I want you to look at it. Think about what the culprit is. What's the culprit? All right. Now we come here. Go to the next one. In the MAP formula, what values go up to compensate? All right. What values go up to compensate? Okay. Remember the MAP formula. MAP equals to CO times SVR. Okay. All right. So we said that EDV, I'm going to put that in red, went down. That's what went down. What could go up, okay, to help us? Well, if this goes down, one thing that could help us is an increase in heart rate. An increase in heart rate. Let's put that as a nice green. Okay? Green. What else could go? What could happen? We could squeeze harder. We could squeeze harder. What does that mean? That means ESV could go down. ESV could go down. Now I want you to think about that. ESV, that means you're leaving less in the tank. ESV goes down. Less left in tank. Less in left ventricle. Now, if that's the case, think about that. If that's the case, then if this goes down and that goes down, then SV will stay close to the same, perhaps. It won't go down that much. If you go down, think of the math, and you go down less than the tank, then you'll stay fairly decent. So then you won't affect cardiac output as much. So one thing that happens is an increase in heart rate in this. Another is to squeeze harder. All right, let's think about this. Another thing could be is that a lot of radiuses go down. Vasoconstriction. Let's come here. Vasoconstriction. Now what would that do? That vasoconstriction would increase the resistances, which would then increase SVR. If SVR is increased, then it would compensate. So what we're saying is that, to say it again, is these would be the compensating aspects. Okay? We're going to close here and pick this right back up.